Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. And each week I say this, we wouldn't be able to have this series if it wasn't for all of these wonderful people who have chosen to share their stories. And this week is no exception because we've got Tomi Akingbade, and she's a wonderful young woman. I was so impressed when I spoke to her earlier on in the week. She's the founder of Black Women in Science Network and a PhD student at Cambridge University. So Tomi, I'm going to ask you that question, which I ask all of my guests, which is, can you tell me about, as you were growing up, what it was that gave you your sense of identity, your sense of belonging, your sense of identity and belonging?
Yeah. I think, okay, so growing up, what gave me a sense of identity and belonging, I think, was definitely where I was placed. So I'm born to Nigerian immigrants who were based in the UK. I moved to the UK when I was very young, so my entire growing up has been in the UK. So my upbringing has been in the UK, and I think that definitely shapes my identity as someone who is Nigerian but has been raised in the UK.
Mhm.
I initially grew up in an area that was diverse, not necessarily Black, but it was diverse. There was lots of people from Eastern Europe, lots of people from Asia. So I grew up in a diverse area for the first 3-4 years of my memory. And then when I was about 8-9 years old, I moved to Essex. I moved to Essex, and that was a case of being very few, like diversity was not a thing. Most people grew up down the street. And I think that formed my identity. And I was like, oh, okay, like I mean, I was 8 years old, but I was like, I am a Black person. Like I'm Black. And not everyone has the same stories that I do, or has kind of like the cultural input that I have. And I think that shaped my identity, and really I guess it made me really proud of it. Like I loved the fact that I could go to school and be like, yeah, we do this at home. And like I found everyone else's lives not as interesting as mine.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I've spoken to other people, what kind of things did your parents, being Nigerian, what kind of things did they kind of like instill in you about being Nigerian, etc.?
Mm. Yeah, so I don't think so. I don't remember instances of my parents being like, "You're Nigerian, be proud," anything like that, or like,
Mhm,
or forcefully instilling things in me. I
mhm,
think it was exposure. So, for instance, I went to a church that was predominantly Nigerian,
mhm.
um, and then most of the life that we lived, like with cousins, with family, all of my stuff outside of school was with Nigerians. So just a great sense of pride. Like I loved going to weddings and like how cool the weddings were. I loved our food. So I don't think it was necessarily instilled like you're Nigerian, be proud of it. It was like I was just always thought we were really cool. Yeah.
So it was the fact that you had that exposure
Yes.
to the,
I had a Nigerian community. Like I didn't lack of
yeah.
that. Like whether it was we had to drive 2 hours to get to the other Nigerians because we, like I said, we moved to Essex. So like it
Mhm,
was always a case of anything that I did that wasn't school or
mhm.
sport, it was probably surrounded by Nigerians or other African Caribbean people.
Yeah. So you had that sense of, so that's what gave you your sense of
Oh,
identity.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Community definitely. Like, yeah, having that community outside of the immediate community that I had to go to every day, 100% instilled like a sense of like pride and identity in me.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that you switched schools. So you moved from one area which was, more multicultural, and then you went to an area which was much less. And there you automatically you said, "I am Black." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm proud to be Black. How did that play out in the classroom with the schoolmates, etc.?
Yeah, yeah. So for context, just so everyone knows, so I moved from North London, which and I moved when I was 7 or 8. So
Mm-hmm.
at that point, you're in year 2, year 3, maybe. I
Mm-hmm.
might put that wrong, but in the UK,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I moved fairly young. And yeah, so when I moved in the classroom, I think when I got to Essex, I think it was a case of I had to explain a lot about the fact that things happen differently in my household. Not had to, but I would say something and people look at me blankly and I was like, yeah, like you guys don't like eat different foods. It isn't, I don't know, proper like English. Like on Sunday, I don't have a roast dinner. Like that's just not something we do. So like I think that for me, it was like the understanding, for me, almost blessing and curse. It was the first time I realized that like British people could be British. I think, if that made sense. So like the people grew up in Britain. Like I was really shocked when people like, my mum went to this school. I was like, your mum didn't come from another country? Like what? That's weird. So I think like lucky in that terms for me, it was never weird to me that my parents didn't necessarily spend their entire upbringing in the UK. So yes, I think in the classrooms it was things like that, explaining myself a bit more. There was also, again, at that age, I think there's like you at that kind of, at that age, or at the other kids are at that point where, because I believe that like I think we've all seen the video circulating on social media that like kids aren't inherently racist. Like no one's born racist, I don't think. So when you're at that age, I think they're starting to hear their parents saying certain things. And in saying that it wasn't the most diverse area, there was obvious racism and prejudice and lack of like knowledge about different cultures. So I think it was at the age where kids were trying, like asking, very inquisitive about and being aware of differences. So I think it was things of it's hard to call it bullying, but there were definitely comments that were definitely related to my race. So like if people, like everyone, kids called each other names, and it may have been playful and may have been joking, but then I was like, everything you're calling me is brown. Like maybe don't do that. So I think definitely it plays on the classroom, and I'm, as much as I can be proud and like, love my culture at home, as I almost felt the need to convince other people to love it as well, or to respect it at least. And that's a lot. Now looking back, that's a lot for an 8-year-old to do. Yeah.
So when you moved from into secondary school, or did you move with the same kind of cohort of students, or was it a new environment? How was that?
So it was a new environment. So I didn't move with a lot of the people from my secondary school, from my primary school. So, and in saying that, the people from my primary school, by the time we were 10, 11, they weren't mean or using slurs or anything like that. I think, but again, I was one of maybe two black people in my year group or something like that, or maybe, yeah. So there wasn't much room for them to like there's no way that I could have said, oh, they're being racist to me, if they weren't being explicit, because I was the only one. If there was a couple of us and they treated us all the same, I could be like, oh, okay. So saying that, I moved with some of the cohort into secondary school, but I came from a very small primary school into quite a larger secondary school. And I think the transition was, there were definitely more black people in my year group, which is great. And all of us were different. So it wasn't like I was around people from very different. So some people, their parents had been in the UK, Nigerians, people from Ghana, people from the Caribbean. Like there was more diversity within the diverse people. So it was just more people, more mixes of people. So that transition was great. And I think also I had the opportunity to spend more time with black people between Monday and Friday. Before it was just like Saturday, Sundays, evenings I could, but it was like, oh, okay, like we are now making jokes in our classrooms about being Nigerian, which is like in fun ways. So that's the change, I guess, that happened there.
So you effectively, you found your tribe while you were at school. So going from primary, where it was you were literally the only one. Now you found a tribe where you could converse, and so you felt you could belong. You have that sense of belonging.
Yes, I think absolutely amongst that group, there's obviously like it's still Essex. We are still maybe, let's say, 20 black people in a group of 200 students. And they're still like, it's weird. Yes, I felt definitely like I had a sense of belonging within my community and also outside of like my immediate community. However, that like when I think back and I actually think deeply, because you forget some of the bad things, there was such overt racism going on and at that secondary school at that time. I think it definitely, so there definitely was a sense of belonging, but there was also an element of trauma bonding happening there for sure.
Okay. I'm not going to go into that unless you want.
Yeah.
But so in terms of like academic, because sometimes it sounds as though that you enjoyed, to an extent, you enjoyed school, you enjoyed learning, etc. What was it that kind of like pushed you to, which were the subjects which you navigated towards or were you just an all-round? Or how did you come to your decision making?
Yeah, do you know what I say? So, no, I wasn't good at all subjects. I was terrible at languages. I was really sporty, but I wasn't the best at PE in the way that other people were. Like I did athletics all throughout growing up. I was played round, played netball, but I just was never really that good at PE lessons. So that
Mhm.
was the thing. But I honestly, I really enjoyed a lot of the arts. Like I enjoyed drama a lot. Didn't end up taking it for GCSE or anything like that. I did media studies a lot, so I loved creative stuff. I liked art. Wasn't very good at it, but I liked it.
Mhm.
Um, and then when you come to the, because I'm a scientist right now, so people would assume that I love science. I didn't like science at school. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't that exciting to me. I just didn't really have that much feeling towards it. I always use the story of how I actually ended up in science. Is there was one page in a biology textbook. So I did triple science.
Mhm.
My parents pushed for that, but also my school needed the top people to do triple science to keep within. If you go to certain schools, they need to meet their quotas of how many people get A stars, between 5 A stars to see. So it was one of those schools. So they begged a couple of us to do triple science. I did it. And there was one page in the biology textbook that was about the brain. And I was like, oh, is this what it's like to be interested in something? Because I liked everything. It's like a lot at school.
Yeah.
But was never like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I didn't have any of those feelings, and I was really confused when other people did have those feelings.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I saw this page in the book and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. But there are 200 other pages, so I had to kind of move on. And then when I got to sixth form and they were saying you have to pick a topic to do at uni, I was kind of like, I don't really want to, there's nothing I want to do that much that I want to spend 3 years doing it. And then I remember that page and I was like, oh, okay, like if that's a subject, I'd want to do that. So
Mhm.
that's how I ended up doing neuroscience at university.
Wow, wow. So it was that the page in the biology book,
Yeah,
which
literally one page.
which got your interest, captured you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So you went off to Nottingham, was it, to be an aide for? How was that transition for you, going from?
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah. So going to Nottingham, one, I really
mm,
wanted to leave London because
mhm,
I feel like most of my just London Essex area. So most of my life, I just feel like most of my life is probably going to be there. So I was kind of like, this is the only opportunity for me. I felt like to leave. So
mhm,
I wanted to go out of London. So I picked Nottingham because I knew it had honestly, I knew it had a good black community. Like I knew that their ACS was like there were people there. And
mhm,
I really didn't want to be in an institution where I was so lowly represented again. I just thought I'd been through it.
mhm,
At sixth form, secondary, everything, I'd been through it. So I wanted to go somewhere where we were a bit more represented. So I picked Nottingham for that reason. And also there was only 4 or 5 universities that did my course at the time.
mhm,
So that's how I made the choice to go to Nottingham, really. Yeah. But the transition was, in terms of academics, it was good because I only did what I was interested in doing. Like you pick that one subject. Again,
mhm.
I didn't have that many interests. I was doing what I was interested in. Um, socially good as well because I think for most people, uni is quite cool in terms of like you get to move out, you get to kind of forge your own path in terms of in certain things. So good, I guess the transition was, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And so you said there's only a few universities that took the course, which is neuroscience as a
Mhm.
so so. What was it like for you on the course as a
Mm.
young Black woman, just joining the university? What was it like?
Yeah. So yeah, so the course was small. There were very few people, very few Black people on the course. Um, and definitely people on my course, the other Black people on my course were met with comments that were like, oh, people like you don't do this course, like overtly said to them, I think on the first day of university, was like, oh, like what are you doing here? Like people like you don't do this course, like I didn't realize that, like Black people could do this, did it stuff like just really silly stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, although they weren't said to me directly, I was aware that I was sitting in rooms with people who believe that every day, for 3 to 4 years. So so there's that, like on the course and dealing with that kind of thing. Because as much as I said there was diversity, a lot of Black people, in my opinion, at Nottingham compared to a few other universities, I guess. Um, on my course there wasn't, like they weren't doing my course, they were doing other courses. So there's that to grapple with, I guess, when you're doing a course. So I think as a young Black woman, I didn't see myself in professor, like in the people that were teaching me. I wasn't seeing myself in textbooks. I wasn't seeing culture considered in diagnosis or anything like that. So invisible is probably how I felt during my doing my undergrad course. Yeah.
Wow. Was that all the way through, or
Um, I would say so I did an integrated master's. So I did 2 years at university, a year on placement and a year back at university. I would say in the 3 years that I spent physically at the university, yeah, fairly invisible. I met one of my mentors, Dr. Maria Augusta Aruda there, who is now head of research and development at Nottingham. She's a Black woman. She wasn't teaching me. I saw her in the corridor and I chased her down. I was like, I have not seen a Black person in this department like that works here. And she took me under her wing. So like in moments like that, definitely feel invisible. But is when I stand by this quite firmly. The only reason I'm still in science is because I took that research placement year and I started to see I was valued there, and they showed me that I could contribute to science. And if I didn't do that year, I'm not sure that I would have tried or fought to have stayed in science.
Right, I need to redress. I need to come back. I need to look because you sparked some stuff as you was talking there. So one, there was a lack of representation, but you did find someone, Maria. You said, yeah.
Yes.
How did she help you in terms of mentorship? What was it that she did for you?
Do you know what it was? The things she did a lot for me. The things that I remember the most is just looking at me and be like, you can do this, like you can do this. She was like, she didn't teach my course, she was not associated with my course, she was just in the School of Life Sciences. So she had no input to my course whatsoever. But she would see me in the corridor, be like, how are you doing? I was never asked by like a lecturer, how are you actually doing? So not that, of course, courses are big, so I'm not saying any other lecturer should have come and said that, but it made a difference to me that someone was cared that I was turning up and doing things. And even I think also her input as well, for me, it was genuine, and she listened to what I said, and then she also told me a lot that I had an impact in her life. And I think that was when I was like, oh, like I'm meant to be here, in the way, because I'd kind of floated through passing exams, sometimes barely, and like just not necessarily that I needed to make an impact, but not feeling like I was even like it wouldn't have mattered if I was there or not. So I think even things like I said to her, I was like, it's really important to me to see you. And then she, I think, so she, at my graduation, she sat on the stage. She said she never sits on the stage at graduations, but I was like, my little brother and sister are coming. And she was like, and I was like, it actually means so much to us to just see people wearing those robes. Like, we don't really know what it means. Like, I never really knew what a graduation was before I graduated. But I was like, it's going to be nice for me to walk across the stage and it not to entirely be white people. And so she, for the first, I don't know if it was her first time, but I think she said one of her very first times she sat on the stage at that time. And she said in the times that she was invited in the future, she always sat on the stage because she said she realized it was important for herself to be visible. So things like that, knowing that even though I'm saying she's impacted me, she's saying that you're impacting me as well. And it was like a mutual back and forth thing. And even after leaving university, things like, so she's quite active on Twitter. So even things like, I was really struggling to find a PhD, and then she kind of just she catch up with me every 6 months or so, even after I'd left university, and just make sure I was doing okay. And she tweeted out, she was like, why has no one given Tomi a PhD? Like, she literally and then like, I know the kind of people that are on her, like following her on Twitter. And then from that, someone reached out to me and was like, do you want to do a PhD? And like things like that, her like being willing to use her standing in society to make sure that I'm doing okay, it meant so much to me, and it continues to mean so much to me. She's still a massive support, and I know if a random person emails me that I'm like, this is a bit too good to be true, it's because Maria's told them to email me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big up Marie.
Big up Maria. Or like literally, I'll say her name wherever I go. Big up Maria.
That's so there was an explicit example there of somebody who, even though you didn't know her, she didn't know you, there was no connections, no ties, but you were able to make that connection, and both of you have inspired each other going forward. That's absolutely brilliant, right? But you also said about the fact that when you went into industry, you then were no longer felt invisible, you felt valued. Could you just expand on that? please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to University of Leicester, and I was working under a professor and clinician in neuroscience.
Hmm.
And basically you had to find a placement in order to do the integrated master. You had to find your own placement. It wasn't guaranteed placement. So I'd reached out to her quite late because my lecturer had put it into my head that I wasn't good enough to do a placement. So I reached out to her quite late, and then I was like, would it be okay to come to a lab? Still not really. Again, I hadn't really been guided through the process. I didn't know what a research placement was.
Hmm.
Again, at this time, you have to bear in mind, I don't know anyone in science who's older than me. Like I don't know anyone who's gone to university and done science.
Hmm.
So I'm really like naive, and I don't know anything that's going on. So I've reached out to her. She said, you can come. I've moved to Leicester in like 2 weeks. And then she's like, the first meeting I have with her, she's like, what do you want to get out of this? And I'm just there like, what? Like, you're asking me? I thought you were just going to come and tell me what to do. So from the beginning, she was very much like, this, like, you are an independent researcher. I want to hear what you think, and I want to hear what you're interested in. What do you want to do? And she just gave me the space to explore and be a scientist and be a researcher. And that was the first time that I'd felt that someone had said I was smart. Um, I think before, I guess, like, traditional exams and things like that aren't the best for me. Like, I don't really excel at them in the best way. And I don't feel like it shows my intelligence.
Hmm.
So she having that difference, and then also having someone sit with me one to one and say, what do you want to do? Okay, I think you should do this. This is how I would do this. And like developing me as a scientist, and like valuing the fact and affirming that I have valid thoughts and ideas that could contribute to the field. It was huge, and it was definitely game changing for me.
So here we've got another two examples of women who kind of like touched you, kind of
Yeah,
like a specific point when you needed it,
yeah, absolutely.
and reaffirmed, empowered, and let you not feel invisible but feel valued.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So one fantastic. So what did that lead you to do? Because then clearly you went on to finish off your masters. But
Yeah.
what else did it lead you and inspire you to do?
Yeah, so it was actually while I was at Leicester that I started the Black Women in Science Network, which
Mhm.
has been running now for 5 years. So I think so it's gone in stages now. So I'm at university. I'm like, I don't know why I've come to do this course. I don't know why I'm here.
Mhm.
I enjoy the subject, but I'm hating this degree and like this whole process. Then gone to Leicester, and I'm now being like, oh wait, like I love this. Can this be a career? Looking around and seeing absolutely nobody who looks like me
Mhm.
in the neuroscience field. And there probably were, like, I want to be clear, there probably was. It just, in my viewpoint, I couldn't see it. And then I'd go to, there was a lot of stuff at this time, and I guess now as well also, about like women in science and talks like that. So I went to one. I was also very lucky in the office I sat in with the other PhD students. A lot of them were women, and
Mhm.
all people who cared about diversity, whether they were white men or anything like that, people who did care
Mhm.
about diversity. So they were going to a talk, and they were like, oh, Tommy, you should come. I shouldn't have been there because I was a master's student, but they were like, no, we don't care, you should come. So they got me into this talk, and I met another black scientist. And
Mhm.
I kind of went up, we kind of, again, like when you see each other in the corridor, you run up to each other, especially when you haven't seen a black person in your field in like months at this point.
Yeah.
I was like, hi. And she was like, hey. And she was like, we were basically just encouraging each other, just talking about like, oh, do they like ask about your hair as well? Do they do this? Do they do that? And we were kind of bonding over that and then talking about our goals. And I left there feeling so recharged.
Mhm.
And so I just like, again, like I again valued, and like I had something to contribute. And it was a bit of energy that I had to like come back into the workplace.
Mhm.
And I realized, I was like, white people get to experience this every day. Like, that's not fair. Well, maybe not every day, but more often than I'm experiencing. I was
Mhm.
like, that's not fair. So I started the Black Women in Science Network to basically get those feelings more regularly. So an online community of Black women who can connect and join each other. So I think going there, without going to Leicester, I'm not sure if I would have formed the community because I wouldn't have seen a future in science. And I guess what I needed from that community at that time for myself, and I started it selfishly, I'll admit that, because I needed a community. What I needed was people to tell me that I could have a career and what a career would look like, and also to be aware of the challenges. I think I was tired of being caught off guard, of not knowing like what my experience as a Black woman was going to be like in certain fields, and
Mhm.
realizing that there were definitely people who'd been through it earlier than me, but I just wasn't connected with them, and I needed a way to be connected with them. So that's I guess what those experiences led me to do, and that's a large reason why the Black Women in Science Network exists.
You see, I'm going to try and articulate this. There's one thing being exposed, right? And then there's another thing in going and doing something. because you were in your little silo and you felt, I don't like it here, right? Now,
Yeah.
number of people, they would have just said, you know what, I don't like it here. I'm not staying here. I'm gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, but that's kind of like what I've been seeing, where a lot of young black people go to university, it doesn't seem to gel with them, and they then go, right? There
Mhm.
seems to be there's a broken pipeline. But here, you didn't take that option. You decided, I'm going to do something about it. Where did that come from?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think the entire life story that I've explained, like leading up to this point, probably has a role in why I didn't just leave. I think it was a case of I'd constantly been in spaces in which I didn't feel like I was supposed to be in. And I think I was over it. I was just over people pushing me out of doing things that I liked or making me feel like I didn't belong in spaces. And knowing that I think that there were other Black women out there that were going through the same thing and that we had something to add, I think that pushed me to keep going. And also the work I want to do, like eventually when I have some autonomy over what I do, is to help the Black community. So I kind of looked and I was like, if not now, like if not me, like who else is going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And also to acknowledge the privileges in which that got me there. Like I know my parents sacrificed a lot for me to go to university, and I know that like I'm blessed to be able to be in some of the spaces I've been. Like for me, for instance, also knowing that nothing had been an accident. I've grown up in church and I do believe in stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe in God. So also knowing that up until that point nothing had been a mistake. Like everything was almost too perfect. So as much as like hated secondary school, I still managed to pass my sciences really well. I got
Mm-hmm.
into science A levels. And then like I got into university of like a fairly competitive course, and I somehow got into placement after all my lecturers said that I'm not supposed, like they said to me that like people like you're not good enough to go on placement, things like that. I go on to placement. I was doing really well at placement.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I was just like, do people keep telling me no, but I'm still here. And I was like, I didn't see myself leaving. And all the alternative careers, like yes, I could have gone on and done accounting, which has more Black people in it, or I could have gone on and done any other field. But I kind of looked at it and was like, I'm really blessed to be able to do this, and I want to do it, and I want to at least try. So that was me trying. I was like, the only way I'm going to survive in this field is by having a community. Because just those sparks of energy that I was getting from those Black women that I was meeting on one-to-one basis, I was like, there's no way that I would be able to do this without them. And also I'd heard other Black women doing amazing things, but being pushed out. Like I wasn't the only out of my friendship group, there were probably, I would say we were almost half and half finance, science, like in terms of like disciplines that we were doing at university. I'm the only one left, or one of two that are still doing science. And I could see it happen. I could see and I understood. I was like, yeah, why would you fight to stay in a field that's not going to pay you well when you could easily, like another field is begging you to come, they're going to pay you 3 times as much.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. So it was kind of like I felt a slight responsibility to stay in science. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're blowing me away here. No, seriously, you are. There's this one statement you just made, which was people keep telling me no, but I'm still here. People
Yeah.
keep telling me no, but I'm still here. It's almost like I still I rise. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
you found that passion and you want to help others build your own community and to help each other to not so I don't want to say survive, but to thrive in this environment because you know that you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's obviously parts of me that doesn't know I can do it, but I keep showing up every day and no one's told me to leave again just yet. So
I'm going to open up for questions. If people have questions in a few seconds, if anyone has questions, raise your hand in the usual way. But what I'm also just thinking, where what do you envisage doing next? What do you,
mm,
because you're now doing a PhD, right?
yeah.
Uh, we've kind of like gone round the houses, right? But tell us a little bit and try and do it in simple terms now. Tell us about the research that you're doing, please.
Yeah. So people are often surprised to hear that I'm not doing research that has anything to do with Black people. I'm basically, so I work in neuroimmunology. So I am looking with the focus of Alzheimer's disease at the moment.
Hmm.
And I'm working with an immunologist, and we're trying to understand what immune pathways and genetic pathways are important in the progression of Alzheimer's disease.
Hmm.
So I work a lot with like amyloid beta proteins, cell culture, that whole kind of thing. So that I'm trying to basically figure out early signs and early intervention points to treat Alzheimer's disease at the genetic level, possibly.
So how just link me in with how is it that you're linking the immune system to the is it to the amyloid plaques? What is
Yes,
it that you're so is it as an immune response, almost
yes,
like an autoimmune
yeah.
disorder kind of thing?
So historically, Alzheimer's disease is known as the amyloid plaques and the tau tangles.
Hmm.
So in the last 30, 20 years or so, there's been the acknowledgement that these plaques are causing inflammation in the brain
Right.
and almost systemically as well. So people are trying to understand which pathways are causing this inflammatory response, and that is leaning very heavily towards it. You start having an immune response a lot sooner than you have the symptoms of memory loss, etc. So
Right.
if we can target the immune response early stages, it's possible that we can delay some of the symptoms, at least, of Alzheimer's disease.
I can understand why you're interested in that subject.
There's that one page in that biology book. That's why I'm here.
I can understand. That's brilliant.
It's cool.
So
Yeah, I enjoy the
what,
research.
what stage are you at in your PhD journey?
So I'm a year and a half in, and I have
Hmm.
3.5 funded.
Hmm.
So I'm a year and a half in, and in terms of like if anyone else is in the PhD, if you can relate to this or done a PhD, I'm in the stage where you kind of don't know what's going on. Like you've
Hmm.
done your optimization and you have like your models that you can use, but now you're like, oh wait, what question was I trying to answer again? So I'm at that stage.
Yeah. Now this is where your community is going to support you big.
100%. 100, like, yeah. So even like is the reason why I knew this stage was coming is because I had community be like, just be aware that this is coming up. And then even when I'm like, this is happening, they're like, we told you. And I'm like, okay, at least I knew. At least I knew it was coming. Yeah.
And you know what was really interesting, another thing that you said, which I found really, were you the first in your family to go to university?
So first generation. So I have an
Yes.
older sister who went to university.
Right.
So she's the first, and give her kudos that because she broke the ceiling.
Yeah.
But then I was next to go, and like really interestingly enough, because my dad had started university but didn't have the chance to finish.
Right.
He'd tried, but always like life as a black man in the 80s, we can imagine like it's not easy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, my parents were very passionate for us to go to university. And then whilst I was at university, my mum actually enrolled in university and did a course as well. So
Fantastic.
now I'm very like even proud to say like technically yes, first generation, but my mum has a degree now, which is cool.
Fantastic. So you had that. You've always had that inspiration. Then you've had your
I think,
sister and
yeah,
your.
I think I was more common, like the typical Nigerian background would be that your parents forced you to go to university. I never felt forced, but I
Mhm.
think they probably were whispering in my ear when I was sleeping, go to university, go to university. Because it seems like they weren't mad that I went to university. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I think they'd always wanted education for themselves.
Mhm.
Um, so they've given their license to mean that me and like my siblings can like do what we want, whether it was university or not.
Mhm. Mhm. That's brilliant. I'm going to ask another question, right? And this question is then related to what next? Where to from here? Apart from getting your PhD, you've
Mm,
got your PhD, but you've also founded this Black Women in Science. What kind of events, activities are you doing, and how? Give us an idea of the size, the magnitude
sure.
of the Black Women in Science network.
Yeah, so the Black Women in Science Network. So as I mentioned, I started in 2018. So
Mhm.
we're approaching 5 years very soon, like a couple of months' time.
Mhm.
So when I started it just as a website and a Twitter account and maybe an Instagram account. And there wasn't obviously anyone but me there.
Mhm.
But the interest was definitely there. And I think so in the 5 years we've grown exponentially, I would say. So we now have over 150 Black women who have signed up and said like I want to be part of this network. And then we have over 300 supporters. So people who aren't necessarily Black women, but just subscribe to our newsletter or support us, whether it's financially or in different ways, and just say like we want to make sure this community is thriving. How can we help? How can we engage with you? So it's grown into that respect. Some events that we've thrown. So we recently actually threw an event in collaboration with the University of Cambridge. And that was a brunch session. And that was a twist on we have monthly meetings virtually for Black women in science to come and talk, air your issues out if you're having anything going on. And there was demand or wishes that we'd have that in person. So Cambridge was like, yeah, like come and have it here. And they paid for us to have brunch in the chemistry department. And yeah, like it was that's one of the in-person events we've done. We've also collaborated with the Academy of Medical Sciences on a couple of events. And we all had like an event that in October for Black History Month that was called Celebrating You. The idea was often we let people get their flowers when they're gone and they get the recognition after they're gone. We was like, no, like these people are doing amazing things, and the fact that you're still in science is a huge achievement in itself. So a celebration event there. We do some mentoring sessions. We kind of engage and collaborate with anyone who wants to work with us. And our motto is a space, a movement, a platform. And with encompassing that, we're very reactive. So if people of our community say they want something, we try and figure out a way to do that. We feel like the volunteers now that work with me, I feel very, very privileged to be in the position that I'm in. So if I can do anything to help anyone, I will. Like if it's like, oh, I know you know this person, can you connect us? Like, yeah, like of course, like it's that kind of thing. I think I'm working off the examples of my mentors. Like for instance, the way Maria behaved with me. If I'm in a position to help someone, I will try. I will try my best.
That's absolutely superb. But where to from here for you?
Where to for me? I think honestly, it was so hard to get into the PhD that I haven't really thought that far past it. If you're asking me to dream, I would love to go back to Nigeria and do some work over there, or at least in collaboration with some people in Nigeria. I have a big issue with the fact that the neuroscience cohorts that are studied don't represent the world. I don't see Black people represented in studies that are done in the UK. Nigeria is really good at research, and as are other African countries. And I'm not saying they need help from me or anyone, but I'd love to be able to contribute to the work that's being done over there. So I think I'd love to do research that impacts the Black community basically, and look at our issues, get our kind of almost our biological information up to the speed of other communities. Like a key passion of mine is Black people's health, and I think being in the UK and like when people have, I don't know, it's like I find issue with the fact that, for instance, I know some people are able to say, oh yeah, my grandmother had dementia, so I know I'm at risk because I'm watching sooner. A lot of the Black community don't know that. One, because we're not being diagnosed at the same rate. And like if we have disconnects with certain communities, like we don't know if for instance, like if someone's in a different country, they may not be diagnosed the same way. So we don't even know like our risk factors. So I really want to get us up to speed with things like that. Just having, I believe, basically, information I think is wealth, and I want to get us up to speed in there with our help.
Fantastic. That's all I can say. I think you've got a clear vision. It's the question then is, how can we all help you to fulfill your vision? Because what you've said is just, it's inspiring, absolutely inspiring. So how can we help you to fulfill that vision? What do you think we need to do?
I think seeing a lot of us staying in science is really encouraging for me, and that really helps. I think I'm so open to advice. Like as much as I know things, I don't know everything. So like I love advice. If someone's been somewhere that I haven't been and they have any connections, I would love that. And I think also, as I mentioned a couple of times, there's been challenges in me getting here. I'm not sure how many more challenges I can overcome. Like people are like, oh, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. I'm like, if science makes it hard, I think I'm out. Like I don't know how much. There's a limit to how much I have. So I think any assistance, I guess, with the hurdles that are inevitable in the scientific journey, that's going to make sure that I get to where I want to get to. Yeah.
Okay, because I know we spoke about it on Tuesday when we spoke earlier on in the week about 100 Black female professors, the Women's Higher Education Network. Do you want to be one of those 100 Black women?
Again, I think looking for, so currently now I see the hurdles and I know these Black women as fantastic as they are, they're even more fantastic because I know how much they've overcome to be where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that ahead of me. And as much as it's inspiring where they are, the journey is not one that I would like to go through because it looks completely difficult.
All right. So here's another question then, based on that, because then what I'm hearing is that we need to change the current narrative of the journey.
No, I think honestly the journey is definitely needed. I think whoever is causing these Black women hurdles in order to get to professorships, because
Mm-hmm.
half of these women should have been there probably decades before they are.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's these hurdles, get rid of them. I want to have the same journey as my white peers. I think that's what it is.
The,
Um, it's very fairy tale, and I know in my lifetime, I don't think in my lifetime it's going to change that much. But I find those Black women very inspiring. I also know, and I'm aware of the journeys they've had to go, what they've had to go through, and the extra hurdles they've had to go to. Because I can probably think of quite a few Black women who are very senior in their field who should be professors or should have been professors like 10, 20 years ago, but just being a Black woman hasn't helped.
that's a sombering note, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't. It's not negativity in my head. It is just a case of I'm glad that I'm aware that these are some of the challenges that I will have to face, and I probably can. And also these Black women who are already there, I know like there's this sense of community that I know that if I was to reach out to probably any single one of them, they would help me in any way that I wanted to be. But it is a case of it's still not fair that there are probably a lot more challenges ahead of me than there are for my white peers.
And I agree with you. And so my question is how do we change that narrative? How do
Yeah.
we change that trajectory? How do we make it that I'm not asking you to say what it is, but it's
A
something,
big question.
it's a question that we have to put in front of people and say, why is it that
Yeah.
for ain't I a woman too? No,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that some women have it easy and other women, just because of the color of their skin, seem to have it so much harder? So
Mm-hmm.
let's have those discussions.
Yeah,
Let's see what,
100%.
yeah,
And let's call people into the room for those discussions, the people that are making the journey so hard.
yeah,
Um, but what I can say is that the increase in number of these amazing Black women who are senior in the field is making it easy for me. Like my journey is not going to be anywhere near as hard as theirs. Like
yeah.
they are like holding the ladder and like pulling us up with them. So it's not going to be anywhere near as hard. It's just yeah.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Listen, I've got two final questions,
Okay.
right? Two final questions. The first question is, um, what advice would you have given to your younger self? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Advice. Yeah, sorry.
got
Okay,
that.
so advice I'd given to my younger self. I don't know if I necessarily give her advice. I think at that time, um, I didn't need it. I think okay, advice would be listen and lean into your community. Even though I think I did that, I think that encouragement would have been good as an encouragement. I think honestly, I think kind of what I needed was the reassurance that it would be okay. Like you will figure this out. And it may not be the perfect story that you wanted, like immediately master's then PhD, then you're like working in certain fields. But it will be okay. I think that's the key bit of advice slash encouragement that I'd give her. Like it will be okay. Like
Mm-hmm,
you'll figure it out.
mm-hmm. And then the second, your younger self, looking at where you are now, what would
Mm.
you say would be your wow factor? They would say, "What, I did that? Wow!"
Uh, I think so. The thing that my younger self would be impressed with, the fact that I'm doing a PhD at Cambridge. I was never meant to be that kid. Like I was never meant to be that kid. So I think, yeah, she'd be very confused. She'd be like, "Who did we lie to, and how did we get in?" Like that's what she'd be asking. So yeah,
Who did we lie to, and how did we get in? Listen, lie to anyone, and you're there, then be there, right? It's been absolutely wonderful having you as our guest on Belonging, and I know that this isn't going to be the last time that we interact with each other.
I hope so.
You're an inspiration already. You're so young, but you're inspiring many people to do many great things. So
Thank you.
keep up the good work, yeah, and we are here to support and help you in whatever way we can.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is just show what we're having next, what's going to be next, who's going to be next week's guest. And then if we stay on, we can have a little bit of a chat afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So our guest next week is going to be Annabelle Soimi. And she's just released, she's an author. She's a recently graduated PhD, and she's also the co-founder and director of reproductive justice initiatives, focusing on the Black community. Her book is called Divided. I think it's already out, but it's going to be a fantastic discussion next week as well. And if you haven't seen some of the others, then please do go to our YouTube channel, which is at tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO, and you'll be able to catch up with many of them. Some of the highlights of our first 100 guests, you can go and have a look at that. But I always say this, and I always end it like this, because every time I look at this caption and I see the 100 guests, the first 100 guests, and I think about their stories, I know that we are here because we belong. And their stories help us to understand how we belong in this society. So have a good week. Remember that this week the clocks are going forward by 1 hour. So you've got 1 hour less sleep, people, right? But make sure that you know that you have a place where you belong. So I'll see you again next week.